Black Hollow. Even its name whispered of forgotten things, of shadows stretching long and hungry from the past. The village nestled deep within a valley, cloaked in perpetual twilight by the imposing mountains that loomed on all sides. A shroud of mist clung stubbornly to the cobblestone streets, twisting like phantom limbs in the biting wind that never seemed to cease. The houses, ancient and hunched, watched with vacant eyes from beneath steeply pitched roofs, their silence broken only by the mournful creak of aging timbers. Black Hollow had always been this way, the villagers would murmur, their voices hushed and laced with fear. Bound to the shadows, to the secrets that clung to the fog-laden air. They spoke of a legend, whispered from generation to generation, of a being born of darkness, a spectre they called the Shadow Man. He roamed the woods beyond the village, they said, a harbinger of despair, his presence heralded by an unnatural chill and the faint melody of a music box. Few dared to venture beyond the village limits after dark, their fear rooted in the stories passed down through generations. Tales of those who strayed too far, lured by the eerie siren song of the Shadow Man, only to vanish into the impenetrable darkness, their fates forever entwined with the chilling legend of Black Hollow. Evelyn, a woman of science and logic, scoffed at such superstitious tales. She had arrived in Black Hollow seeking solace, a refuge from the clamour and chaos of city life. The village, with its ghostly beauty and brooding silence, promised a sanctuary, a place where she could reconnect with herself, where the whispers of the past would be drowned out by the rustling leaves and the gurgling stream. She dismissed the villagers' warnings about the Shadow Man as mere folklore, the product of overactive imaginations and long, dark nights. She had rented a small cottage on the outskirts of the village, a quaint stone dwelling with a thatched roof and ivy crawling lazily up its walls. It was a place steeped in a melancholic charm, its silence a comforting balm to her frayed nerves. The villagers, though wary of her skepticism, welcomed her with a hesitant hospitality, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and apprehension. They warned her not to venture into the woods, especially not after nightfall, their voices laced with a concern that bordered on fear. But Evelyn, her mind grounded in rationality, paid little heed to their warnings. She had always been drawn to the mysteries of the natural world, her curiosity fueled by a thirst for knowledge and a disdain for the supernatural. The villagers' stories, she believed, were nothing more than cautionary tales, spun to keep the weak-willed in check. She would not succumb to such irrational fears. The woods, with their towering trees and hushed stillness, beckoned to her, promising an escape from the confines of her own thoughts. The sun had already begun its descent when Evelyn, driven by a restlessness she couldn't quite place, decided to explore the woods bordering the village. The air was crisp, laced with the scent of pine needles and damp earth. A light fog had begun to gather in the valleys between the trees, its tendrils snaking through the undergrowth like spectral serpents. She ventured deeper into the woods, the silence growing thicker with each step, broken only by the crunching of leaves beneath her boots. The light was fading rapidly, the last rays of the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The air grew noticeably colder, a sharp contrast to the relatively mild temperature of the village. She could feel a change in the atmosphere, a subtle shift that sent a shiver down her spine. The silence, once comforting, now seemed to press in on her, heavy and expectant. Still, she pressed on, her curiosity overriding the growing unease in her gut. She had been walking for almost an hour, the village now well out of sight, swallowed by the encroaching darkness. The trees loomed over her, their branches intertwined overhead, forming a canopy that blocked out what little light remained. She stopped for a moment, breathing in the cold, damp air, trying to ignore the prickling sensation on the back of her neck, the feeling of being watched. It was then that she noticed it. A faint glimmer of gold, half hidden beneath a tangle of roots at the base of a gnarled oak tree. Curiosity piqued, Evelyn knelt down, brushing aside the leaves and dirt to reveal a small, heart-shaped locket. It was crafted of gold, tarnished with age, its surface engraved with an intricate design. As she held it in her hand, the locket pulsed with a faint warmth, sending a tremor through her. It felt strangely familiar, as though she had held it before, a distant echo of a memory she couldn't quite grasp. She opened the locket, its hinges creaking softly, and gasped at the sight before her. Inside, nestled against a faded velvet lining, were two miniature portraits. One depicted a young woman with hauntingly familiar emerald eyes and a cascade of auburn hair, a mirror image of Evelyn herself. The other portrait was of a man, his face obscured by a shadow that seemed to writhe and shift within the confines of the miniature frame. A cold dread gripped her heart, a sense of foreboding so profound it stole her breath away. The forest around her seemed to grow darker, the air heavy with a suffocating stillness. The temperature plummeted, the cold seeping into her bones despite the layers of clothing she wore. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves and sending a chorus of whispers through the trees. Or were they whispers? The line between reality and imagination blurred as the sound seemed to morph, taking on the cadence of a voice, a low melodic hum that sent chills down her spine. The locket felt heavier in her hand now, its once comforting warmth replaced by an icy chill that spread through her veins. Her heart pounded in her chest, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. She tried to call out, to scream, but her voice died in her throat, choked by the suffocating fear that had taken root in her chest. The shadows around her seemed to twist and writhe, taking on grotesque shapes that danced at the edge of her vision. The melodic humming grew louder, closer, weaving its way through the trees, wrapping around her like a suffocating embrace. It was a haunting melody, beautiful and terrifying, its melancholic tune tugging at her soul, pulling her deeper into the heart of the darkness that had enveloped the forest. Fear, primal and instinctive, surged through her, urging her to flee, to escape the unseen presence that she could feel closing in on her. But her limbs felt leaden, her body frozen in place by a terror so profound it transcended rational thought. Her eyes darted frantically around her, searching for the source of the melody, for the presence she could feel but not see. Panic welled up inside her, choking her, threatening to consume her entirely. Evelyn, the woman of science and logic, was gone, replaced by a raw primal fear that reduced her to her most basic instincts.